Good morning. We are live from the Retail Technology Show. This is the FreedomPay session, powering competitive advantage through payments. My name is Natalie Berg. I'm a retail analyst, and I'm delighted to be your host for today's session. We have a number of live attendees, and I know a number of you are also joining us via the live stream. So a very warm welcome to both our in-person and virtual attendees. For today's panel, I'm delighted to be joined by Chris Kronenthal, President of FreedomPay, Jen Hardwick, Senior Editor at FT Longitude, and Melinda Roylett, Managing Director, Merchant Services at Lloyds Bank. So welcome to the panel.
Thank you very much.
Great, so today we are going to be talking about a brand new report that has just been released just a few hours ago, hot off the press. You've collaboratively produced this new report, and it's based on a survey of 300 senior business leaders across the UK, covering the retail, food and beverage, and hospitality sectors. Jen, maybe if we start with you, can you tell us a little bit more about the research, the aim of the research, and if there were any findings that surprised you?
Yes, definitely. So I guess the aim of the research was really to take the temperature of the UK business scene as we move through 2024. We've got a few small bright sparks of optimism, I think, with the economy. We've got, inflation coming down, hopefully interest rates coming down soon. So consumers are feeling a bit more confident. So we wanted to see how can businesses take advantage of that, how are they feeling about their payment strategy from that point of view. And as well as the survey, we conducted a few very in-depth interviews as well with leaders from disruptive UK businesses, such as pasta evangelists and power sheds, among others. So we got that real depth of feeling, I think. And what was quite revealing that came through was this kind of balancing act, I think, that businesses are trying to strike between an exciting customer experience, and we've got, 3 in 5 saying that a good checkout experience is as much as a competitive advantage as a good product, but equally this really strong need to focus on security and a lot of, I think, anxiety about getting that side of it right. So I think that was quite interesting, this kind of balance that businesses are trying to strike.
Great, and we're going to get into some of those themes throughout the conversation, but if we just start with the consumer, we know, and you've just acknowledged, it's been a really bumpy few years. There's been a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of disruption. We've had the pandemic, which we won't dwell on, but we have to acknowledge, the pandemic as a catalyst, especially for digital transformation. We've had the cost of living crisis, the worst cost of living crisis in a generation in this country. We have the war in Ukraine, so fairly significant geopolitical instability. It feels like, although we're not out of the woods yet, it feels like we are on the road to recovery with inflation easing and the prospect of interest rate reductions to come. So I'd love to get your take as a panel collectively on how you see the consumer right now. And as consumers start to feel a little bit more confident and loosen their purse strings, what should retailers be thinking about in terms of payment strategy? So Melinda, can we start with you?
Yeah, no, as the report acknowledges, January and February were bumper months in terms of e-commerce growth. So I think your hypothesis, Natalie, that we are coming out of this these darker times is starting to be seen. And I think as that is happening, retailers are very much looking at their checkouts and looking at their payments infrastructure and trying to figure out how can they capture some of that opportunity and upside. And that's when they're looking at different technologies. And so things like the consumer is really looking at things like Apple Pay and like the Google Pay and the wallets as table stakes. So how do they deliver those to their consumers? How do they ensure their consumers can have an omni-channel experience? This is the new norm. Consumers want to buy things in store and in person and want to be able to exchange them between the two channels seamlessly. So how do they go about enabling that? And I think the third thing is really around data. And so, smaller retailers are looking at Amazon and these type of big power players, and they're looking at how they monetize data and how they can link the customer to the transaction. And they want to be able to offer that service and do that for their customers as well. So that's where technology, such as LBot Plus product, which is working with FreedomPay, can help enable that. So that's the kind of conversations we're having with merchants at the moment. So.
Great, and you've touched on a lot of themes that we are going to come back to. But Chris, can I get your take on the consumer right now?
Well, I think we're seeing how they embrace coming back a little bit from that heavy investment into e-commerce, right? And as they come back, they want to take advantage of the things that advance greatly. So digital payments, digital wallets, we're continuing to see them explore alternative payment methods. And so you've got a consumer that's now been digitally disrupted a few years ago, and we're seeing them really embrace that and not shy away from that, right? And so you've got them interacting with a retailer that wants to engage there. And so I think to this points and the broader topic is, and then we're seeing retailers respond to that, right? How do they provide that seamless digital to in-store experience? How do they link together that customer engagement perspective? How do they get them to feel secure now that they're back in store? And so that's really the mindset of that consumer is I want to come back in store and I want it to be this engaging experience.
Great. Now, Chris, I'm going to stick with you for the next question because in the report you used a phrase that I love, which is customer-centric commerce. And I think all retailers like to think of themselves as being customer first. But I think the reality is that in times of change, it can be hard to stay relevant to your customers. So what does customer-centric commerce mean to you, and how does this translate into the world of payments?
Customer-centric commerce is really about the ease of the customer engagement, right? How does the consumer engage with your brand? How does he or she act with your associates, with the checkout process? What's their sort of holistic life cycle? And then you as a retailer, how do you personalize to that life cycle, right? And so again, we believe philosophically that comes back to technology, right? How do you enable that frictionless and seamless payment? How do you drive identity from that engagement? How do you use the data that comes out of that in a responsible way to personalize that experience and do that in a way that doesn't make the consumer feel untrustworthy of the experience? And so we in the market, and I guess my personal perspective, is really seeing merchants embrace that complete end-to-end ecosystem of engagement, personalization, done in a really responsible way.
Right. So Jen, Chris just touched on seamless experiences, and that was one of the core topics of the report. You talk about the importance of having a flawless customer experience. Could you elaborate on that in a little bit more detail and tell us what does a seamless experience look like?
Yes, definitely. So when we were thinking about the research, we were really thinking about that seamless experience being consistency, being a really key word. So across every single touch point, every channel that a brand has, and of course that seamless transition from the physical space to the virtual space where relevant. And I think on the kind of online side, it's also about obviously speed, as easy as possible. It's about that fast loading time even on the page. It's about every device having the same optimized experience. And it's about that fast checkout. So whether that means, a personalized checkout form when you come to get the purchase, or whether that means just, as we're saying, offering as many payment types as possible so that the customer can pay in the way that is convenient to them and whatever that means to them. So I think that's where we were kind of trying to hone in with the seamless.
It's convenience, but it's also offering that choice and the ability to personalize.
Yeah.
Melinda, a third of businesses, you cite in the report, a third of businesses see seamless payments, not experiences. A third of businesses see seamless payments as a challenge. That feels like a high number. And we're living in this digital era where seamless experiences have become the norm. So what can retailers do to overcome this challenge?
Yeah, I think it's very easily said than done, right? Seamless experience. It's like writing a short memo, right? What's that like Mark Twain quote? I didn't have any time, so I had to write you a long letter, right? And so making things simple is quite difficult. So then I think working with an end-to-end provider, such as FreedomPay, makes everything easy. Instead of having to go off and connect up, as a merchant to Apple Pay or Google Pay, all the different checkout methods that consumers are demanding. You can really just integrate with one platform, and that enables you to take transactions both in-store and online. So it's pretty much turnkey. So I think using solutions, modern solutions, modern technology, is really the way forward for merchants to be able to deliver that seamless experience.
And maybe a question for both you, Melinda, and you, Chris, but what's the risk of inaction here? So what happens both in an online setting, maybe it's cart abandonment, or in a physical setting, maybe it's just a disgruntled customer, but what happens when you don't have that seamless experience for the customer?
Sure. I think the research report showed pretty clearly that if a customer does not feel like that experience was good, for some value of good, whether or not that's seamless, secure, personalized, they consider that to be a bad experience. They will not return to your brand. They will not return to that shopping experience. So that investment that Melinda points out, and we've tried to put together with LBOT Plus and FreedomPay as a joint proposition, is to provide something that is turnkey, that is consumable for a merchant to invest into, to say, I want to solve that end-to-end technical ecosystem so that when that consumer checks out at my brand, they have that really great experience. Because again, the study clearly shows if they don't have that, they will not come back, or that will erode that brand trust and value.
Yeah, I think you guys all know as consumers, right? I mean, if I can't get something quite easily, if I can't do it in a few clicks, I'll just go online to Google and try and find it somewhere else, right? And so I think it goes to the quote in the report, which is, and then what Jennifer was mentioning, that it's not only investment in your product, but also you can lose all that if you don't have a clean, simple checkout experience. So that's we really want to help merchants with that. So
yeah, and just to pull a stat from the report, you said that around 60% of business leaders said a poor payments experience would drive their customers right to their competitors. So it is as black and white as that. So I'd like to dive into this, something you've all talked about, which is choice for the customer, and this proliferation of choice we've seen within retail, but also specifically within payments. Your research shows that contactless payments are now almost as popular as traditional card payments. I think that as a kind of layperson here, I think that's pretty incredible when you consider, just how long they've been around. Now, I suppose the pandemic and the demand for low-touch shopping environments was a catalyst for this, but I'd love to get your thoughts on what's driving this growth and where you see it going in the future.
I mean, I'm Australian, as you can probably tell from my accent, and so Australia was one of the first markets actually to get contactless rolled out, and the adoption curves for these types of technologies are really, really fast now. I think if you look at the personal computer or the mobile phone, the scaling curves, right, were much flatter, and now you see for newer innovations, the scaling curves are much faster. And so I think NFC payments, contactless is just good. It works. It solves a customer, not even a pain point, but it's just easy and it's good technology. So it's really table stakes now. And so you need a platform. And again, thinking about your solutions that you need as a business. How do you provide contactless payments and online payments and link all that together? And that's where solutions like FreedomPay are very powerful. So.
Yeah.
Well, to take Melinda's statements a bit further, right, is that creates that natural inertia for a merchant to say, well, if consumers want digital payments are typically done through a phone or a vehicle. That phone is a great linchpin to identity, and once I know who you are, and I certainly start to know your spending preferences, that really gives me everything I need to tailor that experience, to drive next interaction and really start to personalize, drive loyalty, things like that. And I think, again, going back to the relationship we formed with Lloyds and LBOT Plus, is then you've got a really well-established banking partner in that ecosystem. Now they can help facilitate things that the retailer need and the consumer needs, really on both halves of that equation, to drive value to both parties.
Chris, I wonder if we could just stick with the topic of digital wallets for a moment, because you've previously produced some research that showed that digital wallets account for nearly 20% of retail, hospitality, and leisure spending here in the UK. But within the next decade, that's going to increase to 40%. So this is a huge shift. Do you think retailers are prepared for this?
I think they're getting prepared. They're starting to understand through early examples, early use cases, I'd say early successes about moving to a digital ecosystem for that consumer. And that's really started to increase their interest in investment into taking that journey the rest of the day, or rest of the way, whether or not that's unattended solutions, increased mobility options, whether or not that's certainly in a lodging perspective, moving your room key to your phone. They're going to continue to push down that as that percentage of usage grows.
Great. Now, I've just put up this chart. I appreciate it's difficult for you guys to see it, but I've taken it from the report. It's payment types ranked by popularity with UK customers. And you can see that cash is still pretty popular. So I'd love to get your thoughts on cash. Do you think it's still relevant for certain consumer groups? And do you think as we look to the future, we'll ever truly become a cashless society?
Yeah, well, at Lloyds, our motto is, making Britain prosper, right? And, we try to serve, or we do serve a large, part of the UK population. And there are many people, who rely on access to cash and need cash. And I think, at least in the UK, that's going to continue to be, a really important part of the ecosystem. But I think a lot of businesses, and even like smaller businesses, are starting to see the benefit of contactless payments and of card acceptance. We saw during COVID that card acceptance across like the UK, across all types of businesses, increased exponentially. I mean, cash is expensive for small businesses to be able to manage. Obviously has the security risks. And so, I think that the trend, over time is going to be for cash to be like a smaller and smaller part of the ecosystem. But I think, at least in the, the medium term, for the UK, it'll still continue to be there for those, vulnerable groups that do need it. So.
Great. Chris, if I could come to you on buy now, pay later, because that's another kind of alternative payment method that's really kind of revolutionized online shopping in the past few years. Now, what do you think are the opportunities with buy now, pay later in terms of reaching new customer demographics? We'll start with that. What are the opportunities?
Well, there's absolutely opportunity in creating additional vehicles for spend for a consumer, right? That was really the promise of buy now, pay later, was to reach maybe a younger demographic that wanted rapid opportunities to increase their ability to spend. And as inflation crept up, maybe that even became more attractive, right? So I think in a future state, what you're seeing is as inflation comes down and maybe some of the financial need comes off of BNPL, you're seeing a pivot and a reaction to that by those same players to say, well, at first I gained consumers of BNPL because of a financial need, an increased access to cash and liquidity. But now that's created communities. And I think you're seeing some of those providers go after that community and almost react to, now we have this cohort of shoppers that engage through us, speaking of the content, in a purely digital fashion at first for a line of credit. And now we're going to extend that to a whole new relationship around product offering, messaging, campaigns, and the like. So for certain, BNPL is here to stay. I think it becomes more of a lifestyle and method of shopping versus necessary purely a liquidity and checkout payment option. But those players that were strong enough to survive a little bit of the eroding of that proposition will probably continue to be strong with their communities. And I think so as a retailer, you have to represent that a bit. You've got to, you can't ignore the 8% or so that choose and value that option.
Right, Melinda, anything to add around buy now, pay later?
This is a space that Lloyds Bank is going into, so buy now, pay later, but we're doing it regulated credit. So we've had a lot of feedback from the market and our customers that they want to offer, because of the reasons that Chris mentioned, embedded finance in their checkout. But they're not happy with the existing providers in the market who are monetizing their data, monetizing their customers, enrolling them in affiliate marketing programs without their consent. They want to partner with someone who they can trust and who they know will do it in a really robust way. And so, if any, that we're going to be launching that in a big way, towards the end of this year. But we're already seeing huge excitement from the retailers that we're speaking to, about that proposition. So.
Great. And one final question as we look to the future: how might new innovations like open banking further change the payment landscape?
I think it's just going to be constantly evolving. I think that's the fun, part about payments, right? And so, I've been in payments now, coming up to 20 years, and it never used to be cool. I remember going to South by Southwest, and Snoop Dogg was doing a concert, and I got to go to the front of the line because I'd worked at PayPal then, and so I was like, this is a cool an evolving space. And so I think it's just going to be constantly evolving. It's very technologically driven. Consumers are keen to adopt things that work for them, which means that the merchant ecosystem needs to follow up. So I think it's just going to continue. I don't know what you guys think. Yeah,
I mean, just to echo that, I think that came through so strongly from all the interviews, is that retailers know there's always something else around the corner and they've got to be on their toes and keep innovating, and those that are willing to see that as an opportunity rather than constantly a challenge, I think, are the ones that are going to keep benefiting from that as well.
Yeah. Great.
It's going to be hard to top a Snoop Dogg comment in a panel, but I would say, combined with, to your point, the movement towards maybe as much as 40 or 60% of payments becoming digital or more digital in the future, open banking is a natural extension of that discussion, right? Where if that technology progresses a little bit, the integration of it to the merchant experience increases a little bit, merchants are incentivized to accept open banking transactions. They are cost efficient, and banks and FIs still have a major role to play in that, right? Because they are stewards of that data. They can start to integrate with their consumers in a number of different ways, which are valuable to all the parties. So I am a firm believer that open banking will have a really strong future. I think we might just be 2 to 4 years out from it.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, just like retail is continuously evolving, you know, there's no standing still. It's just, you know, continue to innovate, continue to disrupt, and make things better for the customer, ultimately. So we have about 5 to 10 more minutes left in the panel. We're going to move on to customer loyalty and the role of data. And Jen, I want to come to you for this next question. Both online and in-store transactions generate a wealth of customer data, which we all know. But how can retailers actually utilize that data to become more responsive to existing customer needs, as well as potentially acquiring new ones?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely what came through very strongly in our research was that retailers are putting a really high value on payments data, which I think was encouraging to see that awareness is there. But there's such a broad range. I mean, I spoke to the CEO of the British Independent Retailers Association, Andrew Goodacre, and he was saying it can start as small as in a small shop, you know, linking up your EPOS or your till system with your back office and just being more in control of your stock and knowing that that item that your customer wants is going to be in stock. But at the same time, obviously it scales up to much bigger systems. And, you know, talking with Pasta Evangelist, as I mentioned, their Chief Product Officer, Graham Ferrugia, was talking about if you have the right payments partner, you can use payments data for operational decisions, marketing decisions, and if you have one with that broad cross-section across the market, they may be able to feed to you about new customer segments that you should target based on that payments data, or maybe the next product line that you should be investing in based on your customer profile as well.
Great. Chris, I know we've talked about omnichannel a lot, or unified commerce as we're calling it these days. I guess there still is this disconnect when it comes to payments around what consumers experience in a physical setting versus a digital setting. So what can retailers do to better connect those dots?
At the end of the day, it's hopefully the same answer, right? Which is technology, right? It's really technology is that unifying force that can take and create that online personalized experience and bring that in store. And as we continue to see consumers adopt a digitized persona, whether or not that's through a phone or through a merchant who is very good at managing their data through the ecosystem, they should be able to create that. And in fact, not just recreate it, but almost iterate off of it to a better experience. Because unlike a disconnected e-commerce experience, that's really where retailers can shine, is by leveraging your associates, form factor, design factors, all of those things that go into the physicality of a bricks and mortar experience, and then harness the data and the technology got in a digital sense and amplify it through your physical associates, your team members, how they engage the consumer, how they get access to the knowledge to personalize that experience. So if anything, it's not so much about just simply making it parity, it should be better if you're in person, if the technology is there to facilitate that.
Yeah. Now, it's arguably a lot easier for large companies to do this than the smaller to medium-sized businesses, and that's something you call out in the report. You highlight how SMEs are much less likely to use payments data to generate customer insight. So perhaps just opening it up to the panel, what are your thoughts on this? What's stopping them, and how can they better utilize this data?
I mean, I think that nothing's really stopping them. So, you know, we speak to SMBs, you know, every day about, you know, FreedomPay and LBOT Plus, and you know how we can help them like solve these problems. And so, I think it's just like awareness that there are solutions out there in the market, you know, which is really important. But I think the playing field is democratizing. You know, as I said before, you know, this kind of personalization and linking of payment data to customers online and in-store was the preserve of, you know, huge, large enterprises like the Amazons of the world. And technology like, you know, LBOT Plus, you know, working with FreedomPay is really democratizing that, so it's not such a competitive advantage for the large guys. So yeah, it's all out there to win. Yeah.
I think you could almost play a contrarian view to that statement as well, which is to say Amazon is really good at personalizing through technology because, to both your points, they have a tremendous amount of assets to make that happen. The inverse could be said, though, for that small business, is because they're serving maybe a smaller demographic with less, I'll say, training and overhead, one could argue that they should have almost a better, more boutique experience, and that really is the differentiator. And to Melinda's point, platforms like FreedomPay, collaborating with an LBOT Plus to give you everything you need technologically should almost unlock you to then have that SMB associate be really in tune to that customer and his or her experience.
That's a really good point. Let's move on to talk about value and trust, because we've talked about the proliferation of choice, we've talked about the role of payments and driving loyalty, but none of that matters if security isn't there. Every payment has to be reliable and secure, and this isn't just about fraud protection, but also data privacy. So Melinda, what happens when a business gets this wrong?
Yeah, well, I think we've all seen in the press, right, the consequences, of businesses that have data leaks and data breaches, and so obviously this is of primary importance. And when Lloyds Banking Group, a bank that has been around in the UK for hundreds of years, very much like it's core to our being the security and stability. We went through robust process of ensuring that we're the technology partner that we worked with was state of the art in this way, and so incredibly confident that the technology solution that we have with FreedomPay is incredibly secure and incorporates state of the art fraud technology. With 3D Secure, with the partnership with Count, who are experts in this field. So I think it's very important. And at Lloyds, when I speak to customers, every day, and that kind of knowing that they can come and get state-of-the-art technology solution to solve all these challenges they have, but also with the backing of the Lloyds brand, I think that's just a winning combination that we're finding. So.
Chris, I wonder if you can pick up on Melinda's points, because in the report you mentioned how payment security is more than just a hygiene factor. It's the foundation for every customer relationship. So what are some of the ways that payment partners can help businesses, and what role does data play in all of this?
Well, I think answering it in two parts. One, from a security perspective, FreedomPay were the first people in the Western Hemisphere to actually do the PCI Council's new point-to-point encrypting standard. So as Melinda says, we take that responsibility of securing payment data very, very seriously. The other part of that is, at a core foundation, FreedomPay is a technology company, which means, to be clear, we don't own your data. When we partner with world-class banks like a Lloyds, they are in control of that. They have those really high standards and that kind of foundational belief in data privacy and security that comes with their heritage. And so if anything, we're just following in that suit. And so I think, to answer the second part of your question, which is how does that benefit the merchant or the retailer, that's sort of implied in the basis of the bargain, which is you're going to come to a provider like us, a solution like us, that really is uncompromising from managing that data, not just from a security perspective, but from a provider perspective, but then also creating access to it so that you as a retailer can use it in a way where you don't have to worry about, are you breaking a rule? Are you doing things that are inappropriate for standards like GDPR, et cetera? So I think it really comes in the envelope of the type of solution provider that you're looking for.
Fantastic. So we have time for one more question. There's a lot of retailers in the room. There's also a lot of retailers that are joining us via the live stream. What would you most like retailers to take away from this conversation? What's your call to action for the industry?
I can start. I just say, this stuff that we're speaking about now, seamless checkout experience, omnichannel, provision of wallets and different payment methods, it's really table stakes now, right? And so, really, to be competitive, you need to, have sorted these things, their hygiene. But that being said, there are technology solutions in the market, such as the one with LBOT Plus and FreedomPay that will allow you to meet these customer expectations in a very easy turnkey way.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think the report shows, the opportunities are there, and payment strategy is an opportunity. And for retailers who are not sure maybe if now's the time to invest or they don't know where to invest, the partners are out there to be that support to you, to give you that confidence, so that you can focus on the product or what you want to focus on, and know that the payment strategy you can be supported on and you can take advantage of those benefits.
Great. Chris, I'll let you have the final word.
Yeah, happy to close it out as an extension of what Jen said. I think the technology has rapidly evolved over the last 3 to 5 years, especially coming out of the pandemic. And so it's almost, I don't be too provocative, a little bit of a gauntlet thrown to retailers, which is you can either continue to do what you've done, perhaps with what I'll call legacy stable of partners, or realize that this, to Melinda's point, integrated experience across payments, consumer data, and the security that goes into that, that is an investment choice. You're making a cognitive choice to invest into the technology necessary to create a lot of the use cases that we've described today. And it's less now almost a payments discussion, and it's more a technology discussion. And to maybe our partnership with Lloyds and LBOT Plus is, well, how do you create all of that already ready to go, right? So there are partnerships and solutions that can do that, and we would encourage all retailers to explore those types of options.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's been great to speak to you. And for those of you who are joining us on the live stream, you can get a copy of the report, Powering Competitive Advantage Through Payments, through the Lloyds Bank website, or you can check out the FreedomPay and Lloyds Bank LinkedIn pages where we'll be promoting it as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalie.